So quickly going back, then you're familiar with the 25th anniversaries of Phantom of the Opera and Les Miserables.
Yeah.
You already mentioned Les Miserables. Um, Talking about Phantom of the Opera, and as always, how did that come about? Did you get to meet Andrew Lloyd Webber? And was the experience of doing the 25th anniversary up there as in one of the top fives, or just up there as one of your finest?
Um, I don't know. It's a funny dichotomy, this, because I'd never done the show. I'd never done a run of the show in town, so I didn't know it all that well. I'd only ever seen it before in Spanish, in Spain. A friend of mine was in Madrid, and I've got to say, Reese, watching Phantom of the Opera in Spanish, I don't speak Spanish. I didn't have a clue what was going on. I did not have a foggiest. Um, so I didn't really have a connection with the show. And it was actually at the same time. I think it was the same year as we were doing the Les Mis film. I think it was at the end. Or was it the year before? No, it was the year before. That's right. But I just started off as Javert. I think it's. I think that's right. And oh, I'm getting my dates mixed up. Anyway, I was doing Les Mis at the time. I was doing Javert, and I think I can't remember whether Ramin was doing Valjean at the time, but Cameron came in one day and said, "Look, we're doing the Phantom 25th with Ramin as the Phantom." Cameron sort of said, "I always feel like the show works best when Raoul is a sort of genuine opposition to the Phantom, when it feels like they can take one another on, as opposed to the Phantom sort of having primacy the whole time." So he said, "Look, I know you guys are, you've worked together a lot, and he's like, I think it would work really, really well if you came and did Raoul." I felt slightly trepidatious about it because I didn't have a history with the show, and I knew that there was an awful lot of decent actors who had done the role, who probably would have been sat on the sidelines thinking, "Hang on a minute, why is he doing it? He's never done the show before." So I did sort of go into it with feeling slightly with a bit of imposter syndrome, but we rehearsed it maybe for about 2 or 3 weeks, and if I'm totally honest with you, the very first performance, I think we did 3 performances. The first performance I can't really remember much of because it was such a blur, and I was so nervous at the Albert Hall, sort of doing this brand new show. I'd been doing Javert in the evenings and rehearsing Phantom during the day up until about 2 days before we did the performances. So I was running on empty, really. But the reaction at the end was something quite remarkable, and the reaction at the end of the third performance, which was the one I think that got filmed for DVD and the one that got transmitted to cinemas around the world, the response at the end was something that I'll always remember. And Andrew was around. I didn't have a great deal to do with him because he didn't really involve himself too much in the rehearsals. We had a big team that were looking after all of that. Gillian Lynn, the late brilliant choreographer Gillian Lynn, who choreographed the original production, was there, and I remember enjoying working with Gillian a great deal, and obviously working with Ramin and Sierra was great fun. That show and that 25th anniversary has sort of taken on a bit of a life of its own in a way. Especially going somewhere like the Far East, to Japan or China, that production still is huge over there, and I get lots of love from that. So I have a lot to thank it for. But it's not something that because I only did it for about 3 weeks and 3 performances, it's not something that I have a huge attachment to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a funny contradistinction, really, but I guess that's life. Sometimes you become known for things that, or you are. There is an attachment that you have to something which other people don't share. It's quite strange.